I'm afraid of
myself. Something that we need to be aware that many of these schools fetishicize the discursive format. I mean, I think that was also one of your format, maybe unconscious because I'm not a native English speaker. And also dismissal of what is very particular to artistic practice. You can call like a formal aspect or the sensible, and so in a sense, like whatever institutional space or art space which endeavor in critical questioning and research and thinking, they are already school, but like different form of school. So like I want to just point out.
Yeah, also I always say that art is first research, because we always have to defend the money, and they always ask for event, and you always go, but it's all, let's say we are scientists, and sometimes you have to come out with something, but something public, and the art exists only if there is an audience, but still, how do you bring it, how do you make it? I think it's still a question about that achievement. And also I was surprised in the public school, because at the beginning I was a bit afraid that it would be only talks and workshop, and it wouldn't be so much about art and more about relational stuff. And at the end, every class has got aesthetic. People, they still have a style, in what they do. If they do a choreography with the audience, then there is something, very stylish about it. And even in every, it's always a gesture, aesthetic gesture, which I find it really beautiful, in that the artists and curators as well are able to create. It resists.
I mean, one thing that I would just like to... one thing I would like to add, in case we're going down a particular road, is that, of course, a publication like this, and in calling something an educational term, we've recognised that there's a difficulty in doing that, in that it becomes kind of representative. There's things that are within, and there are things that are without. There are things that become visible, there are things which remain invisible because of this publication. And I think that, in a sense, maybe there's aspects of this discussion which is kind of disappearing down that road, and it's assuming that, similarly to the way in which we've coined this term, but similarly within that acknowledgement is to recognise that all of those formats, structures, projects, discursive events, schools, academies, pedagogical forms are all different, and they're all attempting to do something different. But perhaps one thing that one could recognise across them all is that there's something within them about the idea of, or the possibility or the potentiality that there are certain conversations, discussions that we may not be having, and the reason we're perhaps not having them is because the forms, formats, structures within which we inhabit are not enabling those conversations, discussions, dialogues to occur. And I would actually go back to Edgar's point, which I think in reading and editing his essay, there was a very interesting notion about this idea of the non-fit, not as some sort of kind of oppositional to the fit, not some sort of dialectical oppositional thing, as being kind of a productive for a broader kind of vocabulary of thinking through kind of non-dialectical, non-fit. And the idea of undisciplinary rather than kind of interdisciplinary, and the idea of the kind of contradictual and impropriety rather than proper. And there is a kind of certain vocabulary which emerges in the book, which is perhaps due to, or because of, or in relation to, or certainly in spite of the impossibility of those discussions which are being curtailed by the existing forms, formats and structures. And I think that there is something very much, again, which comes across in pretty much all the texts, including all the people who are sitting around this table who have contributed is this idea that this idea that uncertainty. Now that this idea that because there are these certain conversations which are needed to be had, and they're not happening elsewhere, is that there's a kind of there's an opening out of a particular space that's not to do with kind of subject formation, as in terms of what you were talking about, this idea of the gift or this idea of the expectation and response to that invitation. And also within that recognition, I think the vocabulary which is orientating itself around the idea of the open, the possible, the potential, etc., is in relation to a certain impossibility. There are certain things which one cannot do. You know, there are certain things one cannot do within an educational structure, university, academy, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to do a thing that we thought we could do. Certainly within the curatorial field, it's becoming increasingly difficult to do the thing that you thought you could do when you started out curating shows and self-organising projects. And there are certain things which you cannot talk about, and there are certain things which you cannot bring down through discussion. You know, you cannot revolt against, you cannot turn against. You know, for example, the Vatican. For example, the Irish educational system. For example, the Bologna process. There are certain things, the wars across the world, there are certain things which, no matter how much discussion we have about them and sit around the table, formalise, informalise them, there are certain impossibilities. And maybe this interest in this kind of openness and this kind of means without an end is trying to kind of come up with some sort of policy of truth, to use Foucault's term, or new truths, to use Rogoff's term in the book.